All right. Who should negotiate salary offers? It's not a trick question. Everybody. Everybody should. So few people do, unfortunately. Now, we are, again, in a different economic and regulatory climate, so there are companies that have publicly stated they don't negotiate. Well, that's fine. That means they don't negotiate for anybody. And that's kind of the point, is to be put on a even playing field. But there's still a lot of companies that do accept negotiations. So only half of all new employees negotiate salary. Anybody in here ever negotiated a starting offer? Okay, you'll have to be shy. 2 out of how many? So, less than half. But that's about average. 55% of workers 35 or older typically negotiate. That might cover a few in here. Only 45% of 18 to 34. It doesn't matter if it is an entry-level position or an executive-level position. You should always make the attempt to negotiate. Now, obviously, with entry-level, you have a lot less power, but it doesn't mean you don't have any power to negotiate. And if you try and they don't respond, then you're going to take the job anyway. Most employers are not offended when you try to negotiate. They really aren't. In fact, the sad part is they expect it from men. They absolutely expect men to negotiate. They don't always expect women to negotiate, which is good, but I've caught a few off guard in my time. So 54% of men are more likely than women to negotiate. I truly think the 49% of women is very high. I'm not sure. I'll have to check my stats. But personally, I think that's high. I think maybe they're relying on that survey because from my experience, not a whole lot of women negotiate. Professional and business service workers are most likely to negotiate salary. Information technology, leisure and hospitality, and sales workers. Isn't it like pretty much every job you can imagine fits into a category like that? We've hit all the categories. Everybody should be negotiating, at the very least, an opening offer. So why bother? Well, as we know, your current salary follows you. Again, there are some new laws on the books that talk about, that specifically prohibit employers from asking about current and previous salary, but they're few and far between, and the ones that are existing are getting overturned. And they're put in place for issues of discrimination. But the problem is, if you don't negotiate, you're already selling yourself short. Negotiating knows that you know your value. I have, a certain level of education, experience, and expertise. I know my value. I know what I will and will not work for. I also know my expenses and what I can't afford to work for. And if you want something, you have to ask for it. Employers, especially, are not going to volunteer to give you more money, even if there's more money available. And then when you change jobs, you should be making anywhere from 10 to 20% more. That's a generalized number. Can be more, can be less, depending on the field, depending on what you're doing. But that's a guideline. So when you don't negotiate, over your career, you can be leaving a significant amount of money on the table. So if you're just negotiating with $5,000 more for a starting salary, you can end up leaving $600,000 on the table over the lifetime of your career. Because that $5,000 builds and builds and builds. So for every job you change, if you're adding $5,000 to that starting offer, it's also your starting base of when you get raises. That's the percentages things are based on. So George Mason and Temple did a study that found out new hires who negotiated their salaries got about $5,000 more on average when they started. It's not chump change. So the difference between 50 and 55 may not seem like a lot, especially if you're debating it. Oh, do I really want to try to do this? It makes a big difference in the long run. It really does. All right, so who has the power in salary negotiations? I'll throw that one out to you guys. Who has the power? Why?
Because we don't want to make a negotiation. We don't say anything.
Well, yeah, that's a starting point. But why do you have the power in the negotiation?
Because the person, the employer wants you.
The employer wants you.
They've looked at a lot of candidates and they've decided that you are what they need.
Exactly. You have the power in negotiation. And this is why, from the candidate perspective, when you're job hunting, one of the most painful processes a human being can go through is job hunting. You find the job posting. You apply to the job posting, get a phone interview, in-person interview, sometimes a second interview, sometimes a third interview. You made it through all these processes, background check, and you finally have a job offer. Now, the employer perspective, pay for a job posting, sometimes more than one, more than multiple different places, 30 to 60 days. Receive hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes nowadays. It's not an understatement. Sort through them, have a warm, breathing human being sort through them. Conduct phone interviews. Start the first interviews and any testing. Bring back candidates for second interviews. Pay for a background check, which in itself is very expensive. And time invested to find a new hire, 3 to 6 months. And that's probably a little bit more on the conservative side. It's a lot of time for an employer. Because what is happening in that department where the manager wants the warm body, they're coming to HR and they're saying, please just find me somebody. I can't get them to work overtime. They don't want to stay. I'm running out of people. I can't take it anymore. They hate me. We cancel vacations. Find me somebody. And that's what's going on. So when they make an offer, it's usually because they're very excited about the candidate. So how do you negotiate your salary? Anybody want to take a stab on how you start negotiations? Do you want to role play with me a little bit?
I guess you offer, something else that's not in your job specs.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. What's your name?
My name's Teron.
I'm sorry?
Teron.
Teron?
Yes.
Okay. So Teron, I'm the employer you are dying to get in the door with. I call you up and I say, Teron, we're really impressed with your experience, your skills. We'd love to offer you the job. The salary is $40,000. What do you say next? It's okay. I know you don't know the answer, but just work with me.
Oh, no, just off the top of my head, based on my career field, I would say I'm in IT. I would offer that I would be willing to do probably a PhD coding. If you would give me an offer of, you say $5,000, if that was the objective of getting it, I'll say, look, even though I'm not trying to get a programming job, with this position, and I'm just strictly doing security.
All right, you've already offered up way too much. Because you're offering and you're describing more skills and what I can do. Here's the starting point. Although you picked up on the perfect word. The perfect word is offer. Mm-hmm. When someone says the salary starts at 40, mm-hmm. the next words from your mouth is that a firm offer. Mm-hmm. Most employers will say, well, some employers may say yes. It's all that's budgeted. The range is 30 to 40, and we're offering you 40. So that's a possibility. But you don't know unless you try. we'd love to have you start, we're getting you set up in 2 weeks from now. The starting salary is $40,000. What do you say to me?
I say that, that's all. That's fine. That's all for you.
What's going to happen next? This is where people get messed up. What's going to happen next?
They say yes.
Okay.
Well, they might
What
say,
might they say? It's a possibility.
It's a possibility they may say it's not as much or not.
It's
right now.
possible.
well,
But
they
if
might,
you are a valued candidate that they have searched through 2,000 resumes for, they are a little bit more inclined to work with you.
yeah, I would think that they would say,
So what's the next thing I'm going to say?
well, let me see about that. How much? The next thing I would say is, how much are you? What do you
What do
need?
you want?
Yeah, what do you need?
And this is where people screw up because they're not prepared. Oh, wait a minute, I found a number. So that's why I say if you absolutely panic, add 5,000 to whatever they just said. And some people do. They're like, I didn't know they were going to ask me that. I used to get so annoyed at candidates. And I'm like, oh, what would you like? Oh, I don't know more. Oh, dude, come on. This is like play school, man. You don't know what you're talking about here. Come on. So at the very least, you need to have a number that you're ready with. And if you absolutely panic, tack on $5,000. That's the only thing you can remember in your head at that moment after you've been dying to get this job. Tack on $5,000. Because again, the manager in the hiring department will get a phone call or an email. Well, they really don't want 40, they want 45. The manager's gonna be like, oh my God, yes, go ahead! I need a body! I can't take it! I can do 5. Sometimes say we can do 5, maybe we do 3. The point is you get more than you would have when you started, right?
I have a question.
Certainly.
What if the employer is pressuring you to be the first one to say a number?
Well, generally, it's the same thing. What is the offer? And if they say, what are you looking for? You can give them a range that you are comfortable with. Usually at that point, you're at the interview stage. Ways to get around it. Zigzag curve. But if you have a range based on information, we'll talk about some sources of what that job pays, cost of living, the area. I mean, it's going to be a lot different on the East Coast than it is West Coast. You look at some of the salaries posted for jobs in California, you're like, oh my God, $150,000. You get out there and you find $150,000 is like minimum wage living.
Yeah.
It ain't easy with a $400,000 housing market out there. So, $3,200 a month for a studio in San Francisco, which is true. But the starting point is knowing your numbers. And at this point, you really should have an idea as to what the position pays, because they would have at least provided you a range, so they're not wasting your time, especially when you get to the second interview stage. Or they may say the starting salary is 40. I'm like, all right, well, I know that. That's good. And when they say starting, you know they're willing to negotiate. And if you're going through the interview process and they say the salary is 40, you can ask, is that a firm number? Because remember, you don't want to waste their time, they don't want to waste yours. Yes?
Does the same rule apply if they're saying the starting salary is 40, but there's a bonus added as well?
Well, that's total compensation.
Okay.
And you have to watch out for that because it gets sneaky.
Yeah.
The compensation package is, 62. Okay, what's the base salary? Don't let them throw in that fabulous benefit package because I don't know about you, but I cannot pay my mortgage with my Cigna health card. It's awesome they give it to me, but my mortgage company doesn't take it. So while it is a benefit I'm grateful for, you need to separate that from base salary. Now, if you're going for a position that is, highly dependent on bonus, commission, something like that, you do have to take that into account. But if you're in a position where, well, we have a 10% profit share, we have a 10% bonus structure, whatever it may be. That's great, but A, it's not guaranteed money versus base salary. And then we're gonna lump that together and say, the compensation package. Okay, well, that's great, I'd like to hear more about that, but can you also tell me about the base salary? Or the base salary range? So if you get nervous with specific numbers, work with ranges. And like I said, if an employer is holding out and saying they don't really want to discuss the salary, by the time you get to the second interview, you need to walk away. There's something wrong. They're probably so far underpaying that position that it's not worth it. Because most employers won't withhold the salary first or second interview. Because again, if they're paying 30 grand less in the market or 30 less than you're making, it's not worth it. And they're not going to find somebody of quality. And they probably know that. That's why they hide the salary. So there's ways to get around it, and there's ways to tactfully ask when they say, well, this is this and this is that. I never bring up the salary on a phone interview. I really don't. They may bring it up and say the salary range is, because they don't want to schedule an interview with you if you're not within the range. Most of the times they may. So the other thing I will say, especially, and this is kind of a little bit of a sidebar on the job market, is don't discount your transferable skills. When we're talking about changing careers, if you were to remove all the titles from your resume, you probably have the skill set that they're looking for if you're applying for that job. So just because you don't have that matching title, don't think that you have to accept the minimum because you don't have a matching title. For example, there's a position of office manager. If you're in a small firm, law firm, consulting firm, whatever, you may do HR functions. In fact, if you're the office manager and there's no one else, you do HR functions. So just because you're not a human resource manager doesn't mean you can't apply for one because you do all those functions. So don't let them try to underbid you because your titles don't match. This is not entry level. I've done all this, I just didn't have the matching title. But the functions was important, not the title. So, what's the magic word for salary negotiation? Let's talk about it. What's the magic word?
Offer.
Offer. Because if you're absolutely terrified to negotiate salary, all you have to do is ask them, is that a firm offer? If you're really scared, you can put a little levity in it and say, is there any wiggle room? That's acceptable. You're asking the same question. So at that point, they've presented a number, so they've started it. They know you're willing to negotiate. They're probably willing to negotiate with you as well, especially if you're being reasonable. So how do you know the value of the job you're applying for? And again, you've been in my classes, we talk about internal value and external value. Internal value, what is the job worth to the organization? External value is what it's worth in the market. Now what happens when you have internal versus external, internal never keeps up with external. When you hire someone new and they're being brought in at 10 grand more than somebody who's been there for 5 years. Because it's just the nature of the beast. It never keeps up because you're giving up the additional money of the marketplace for the stability, for the benefits, for all those things you get as an employee. But when you are job hunting, you need to know external value, especially for the industry. Make sure when you get the offer, you're being patient, letting the employer speak as much as possible first. one of the things that I personally, during my entire career, I have done. Whenever I get a call back, I let it go to voicemail. I do not like to be ambushed. If it's a job offer, if it's an interview, if it's contract, consulting gig, I like to have the information before I contact them. Now, I don't recommend that it go beyond 24 hours, but it's reasonable if you get a phone call, you don't recognize the number, or in fact, you know the number, to let it go to voicemail and get as much information off the voicemail as possible. It's happened once or twice where I've gotten a phone call when they were turning me down for the job. I've never heard that before, but whatever. Usually it's a letter or an email, whatever they can do to not talk to you. It's only been once or twice in my career. But if the information goes to voicemail, you have the name of the person. If it's different, because it's a big company, you may just be a file sent to HR saying, hire this person. You may not have actually met them, especially it might be the coordinator doing all the legwork. You have a chance to research, if you haven't already, the specifics of that position, of the company, of anything you can use in your negotiation. So I say if they leave a message, get back to them as soon as possible, never beyond 24 hours. But they're not going to be like, oh, well, you know, it's 2017, I'll have the message. Nobody got back to me 20 minutes later. I'm moving on. Yeah, 24 hours. That's reasonable. Do the same thing, especially if they're scheduling interviews, because that gives you time to prepare more. So be confident, but not arrogant. I've gone serious hardball with candidates I think are arrogant. All right, you want to go for a run? We'll do this. I know what we can pay, I know what we won't pay. So be careful with that. Be confident in your skills, ability, and experience, but not arrogant. Don't tick off the HR person, the person making the offer. Important points. Be prepared. I cannot stress that enough. You can get salary information from job postings, salary surveys, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Department of Labor. The only thing I say is don't rely on only one source. And I will tell you, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Department of Labor, for this area, their numbers are inflated. They're not really accurate. They really aren't. So I would say look at a multitude of sources. Don't rely on just one, because you may find the one and only anomaly that pays 30 grand more than everybody else. And you're like, all right, I got this. Control the negotiations. How do you do that? This is the biggest tip I learned in law school. How do you control the negotiations? What do you think? I'm gonna guess. Speak as little as possible. You want the other side to talk more. My negotiations professor was one of the most skilled negotiators I ever met in my life. But he was a short, frumpy, overweight man who dressed in bad suits, was balding, but when it came to negotiations, he was a terror. And he says, I dress like this because it throws them off. They think they're dealing with an ambulance chaser when they have no idea what's coming. You know, it's that talk soft to carry a big stick. It was a big stick. He drove him into the ground negotiations. I was always so impressed with this man. And he told us straight up, he's like, they don't even see me as a threat. They don't know what's coming. He's like, I don't need to wear bad suits. I make enough money. I'm very successful, actually. And he would go against some really tough competitors who thought they were really slick and sharp, and he would just chew them up. So you control the negotiations by speaking as little as possible. Respond when they ask questions, but don't offer more information than necessary at this stage. Again, start with the offer. Many people are so excited to see that phone number come up on their phone. They're like, oh, I've been waiting for this. They say the salary starts at 40, 60, whatever. And before they can catch themselves, okay, that sounds great. No. That's why I say it's good to let it go to voicemail. That also gets you in the right frame of mind. Especially if you've been having a very difficult time of job hunting. Like, finally, someone sees I have value. I'm so excited, which is awesome. But make sure you know your value as well. And like I said, it's that word offer will get you a lot further in life in general. I'm selling a used car. It's $5,000. Is that your best offer? Well, what do you want for it? It starts a dialogue without being aggressive. Never say okay to the first offer. Never say okay to the first offer. That's the given. Never say okay to the first offer. Have a specific counter offer in mind. Salary starts at 40. Is that a firm offer? Is that your best offer? Well, what do you want? That's the second step people screw up because they're not prepared. You have to be prepared with a number. I immediately lowballed people who said, I don't know more. All right, well, we can go with $2,000 more, knowing I can go to 8 more. All right, sounds cool. All right, good. Thought that was okay.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
What if you go in and you have, let's say, the number 50,000 in your mind, but
Right.
they say, we're so happy to offer you 6.
Okay.
Should you negotiate in that situation?
Because here's the thing. If they have not said in interviews, our range is 45 to 60. If they have not addressed that, they said, we're still trying to figure it out. We're probably thinking maybe around 60. If they're offering you 60, they probably have a little reserve above it. So unless they have specifically said, our range is firm and it is 40 to 60, and they come back and say, we're going to offer you the highest, don't be a jerk and say, well, I want 65. You know the range is 40 to 60. You know. But if they haven't said, here's our exact range, then yeah, 60. Well, is that the best offer? Well, yeah, that's really the top of the range. Well, that's the best you're going to do. Most of the time they'll say, well, what were you looking for? If you know you're at the very top of the range, I'd probably keep it under 5, maybe 62. We could probably come up to 62. Yes, absolutely.
You elaborated on like the external value of a position. How would you find out like certain indicators about the internal?
Well, it depends on the employer. But sites like Glassdoor are very good now. They provide transparent information. Companies that you're working at might be listed on Glassdoor. And Glassdoor is a website where people, the individual employees, post their reviews, their information about the company. It's anonymous unless you otherwise want it to be. They post their salary. I work for ABC Company. I am a middle manager. My salary is 50. They're really good about this. They're really bad about this. And the information tends to be reliable. Again, I wouldn't look at just one source. But I also look at job postings. Yes.
I have a question along the side of this. What if your company's not willing to share your salary range? How do you negotiate that?
What do you mean going into your current?
Yes.
You need to find that information yourself. You need to go online and look at salary surveys and say, just for example purposes, accountant. There's 10 different sites you can go and find. If you Google accounting salaries Philadelphia, PA, you'll get 2,000 sites. Start with the first 10, take a look. And then you can create your own range based on that. This is what it should be. And if you fall in the middle, then you're probably pretty good. But if you consistently see you're falling on the lower side, it's time to get in there and talk about it. Any questions?
Well, this glassdoor.com, like, give you like, what I was thinking, like, is like, the importance of the position and how we get on that, like, you know, set about that. And I was wondering, like, how.
You should know that based on the hierarchy of your organization. You know the value of what you do by knowing how it fits into an organization. If you don't know the value of your position, not just your specific skills, but your job, then you need to find that out. You need to get the org chart. You need to figure out who reports to above you, what are the satellite positions, what are the lower positions. You get an idea. You need to be your own advocate at all times. I don't mean to be skeptical, but I've lived it. Lawyers don't care about you. Here's being an exception. Employers don't care about you. Remember, I'm a lawyer. I can deny anything. Even on tape, I'll get out. Trust me. Employers don't care about you. They care about the work you do. But I'm sorry to be the cynic. In 2017, we are all replaceable. You have to constantly be evolving your skills, your education, your focus, your career. At the very least, I say never turn down an interview. Because at least, even if you're not interested in the job, you're honing your skills. Now, if it's 2 hours away and it's 30 grand less, then yeah, it's not worth your time. But if it's something that could be worth your time and you're not sure, go to the interview. If nothing else, you expand your network too. Because who you know gets you the interview. What you know gets you the job. Government notwithstanding. So it's important that you are prepared as much as possible. Now, I have some websites at the end that we'll talk about too. Know the range. There is so much information on the internet that is valuable information that you can find this stuff out. It used to be trade secrets, guarded secrets, locked with a bolt, guarded by a vicious dog to find out salary information. We have the internet now. Everything's public, whether you want it to be or not. But it's a valuable tool because you can look at job postings of other companies on Monster, on Career Builder. Some of them have salary information. Again, don't print it out and take it to your employer and say, look, I'm underpaid. You need to have valid information from more than one source. Times you don't want to negotiate, the employer has offered the highest salary in the range. And you know that. It's already been discussed. Like I said, by the time you get to the first interview, if not on the phone, they're at least going to give you a range. Because they don't want to waste their time if you want 20 grand more. Rightfully so. And they're not willing to pay it. And unless it is your absolute dream job, or you absolutely cannot help it, try not to take a job that pays 5 grand or less than what you work currently. Because you will probably be miserable. And on top of that, you'll be underpaid and miserable. It is difficult unless you really, really hate your job, it is difficult to turn down a job offer, especially if you've been job hunting for a while. I just want to get out of my current place. Well, you'll be saying the same thing in 6 months. Unless you know there's room for potential growth, unless they said there's room for growth, try to stay within the range that you're comfortable with. And that's important too. Know your expenses and how much you really need to make to be comfortable for whatever your circumstances are. Because I know some people who are miserable in their jobs and take a job that pays less, thinking they're not going to be miserable, they're more miserable there. And now they're miserable making less money. I can be happy being miserable if I'm being paid for it. I have an amazing constitution to survive any damn near thing. If I'm being paid for it, I can survive the misery. But if I'm being underpaid and miserable, that's it for me. So be prepared with your information and be prepared personally with your information, what you can afford if you really want a job that even pays a little bit more and less than what you really want, but more than what you have now. Is it really worth it? Sometimes it is. I'm not saying it's not. But you have to know that how much of a job pay cut you can afford to take if that's what it comes down to, or how little of an increase you can take if that's what it comes down to. And there are times where you do want to take a pay cut because you really love the job and there's opportunity. I went from being an analyst to being a benefits clerk, but I went back to law school. They're always like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm in law school. It's right down the street. I get out at 4 o'clock. And yeah, it's painful when I look at my bank account, but it was intentional. So, the employer said the offer is firm. Well, if it's firm, it's firm. Don't be a jerk. Don't risk taking them off. You know, and you can tell if they really mean it's firm versus they're like, yeah, well, that's what we were hoping to pay. That's what we're really looking at. Again, those are soft words. You can start negotiation. Like, no, it's firm. That's what the budget is. That's all we have. That's it. All right. Well, then you decide if it's worth it to you or not. Always start with the offer, the salary as an offer, not a set figure. Every single time. The salary is. The job starts at. No problem. Now you have a number. The next words from you are.
Is that firm?
Is that a firm offer? It's important to use the word offer because that is the starting point. They know you are willing to negotiate. They know you want to negotiate. Do your legwork ahead of time. Be prepared. Get as much information as possible. Look up information about the company, locations. Go on Glassdoor. Look at employee reviews. Are there any open postings on Monster or Career Builder? Know what your acceptable range is and stick to it. Because ultimately, if you don't, you'll be miserable. And you'll be doing the same thing 6 months later. Have an exact counter offer ready. Just review points. I've seen so many people screw this up. The employer is not going to do the legwork for you. Is that a firm offer? Well, what do you want? Well, what more can I get? Nothing from me. I respect the negotiation. I don't respect that at all. I always tell my students, I'm a lawyer. I respect the argument. If you can make a good argument as to why this should be right instead of wrong, I will listen. Same idea. Have an exact counter offer ready. If you know that it should be $7,000 more, then say 7,000. 5 is just the guideline. 5 is when you panic. You have no information available. You can't find anything at fingertips. They called, caught you off guard. You thought it was your husband calling. You're like, I picked up the phone, and you're like, oh my gosh, all my paperwork is somewhere else. Start with 5. But if you know, based on all the research you've done, based on internal ranges, external ranges, information, that it really should be $7,000 more, then say 7. I would advise against anything over 10 unless you really can back it up.
I have a question.
Yes.
What if you put your number on the table and they come back to you and say, is that your final offer?
They're not going to do that because they're going to look at that and know what their budget is. I offer you 40, but I know my budget's 50. And you say, well, I was really looking for 45. Let me go back to the manager and say, well, she wants 45. The manager's pulling her out. Give it to her. I can go up to 50. If she wants 45, we're good. They're not going to give you another chance. You only get one bite at the apple. You got to know what you're doing. There might be a little back and forth sometimes. But the employer will exhaust at a certain point and say, I'm not going to keep doing this. Either you accept or you don't. Once or twice is acceptable. Well, we really can't do 5, but we can do 3,500. At that point, I wouldn't say, I want 4. Again, depending upon your comfort level and the position. I'm sure as hell would be. Well, yeah, well, I know what I'm worth. So if you're only giving me 35, I want 4. I'm either going to take it or walk. But if you're new to this negotiation thing, you may not want to do that. And also, if you're currently unemployed and just desperately looking for a job, I wouldn't go more than 1 round. Because I have revoked offers because we couldn't agree. The people were jerks. And I go back to manager and I said, this is the 3rd time. And they're like, if they're nickel and diamond, go on to the next person. It doesn't happen that often. But there is a limit. Because that's telling the employer you're going to be a high maintenance employee. Again, once or twice is fine. If they're open to negotiate, then that's fine. So, but if you've already given them a number, you can't come back and say, well, I really meant 5,500. Well, we can't do 5, we can do 3,500. All right, I guess we can do that. Because you know what? That's more than you would have gotten. And 30, yeah.
So should you ask for more than what you would sell for?
What do you mean?
So like you said, the base rate to ask for is 5,000 more.
Mm-hmm.
And they caught you off guard, should you say 7?
If you know, you have the information, you know that job is paying 7. You know from the competitors are paying 7 more. Then yeah, you should ask for that. But that 5,000 is a starting point and your fallback if you panic. Because usually when people panic, they just say, okay, great. That's why I always say, especially when I have students who are looking for a job, I hate to break it to you, job hunting is like having a full-time job. You have to record everywhere you apply, keep an Excel spreadsheet, the date you apply. If you can copy and download the job description, because they may call you 4 months from now. They don't even have the job description posted anymore, so you can't go back to the monster page where it was. And when they call you and want to do a phone interview, you want that job description so you can answer everything they want on that job description. Let me tell you about my experience with XYZ. So you need an Excel spreadsheet. You need to make any notes. If the original job posting had a salary range, put that on there. You need to put the time in. It's not a passive thing anymore. I mean, unless you have relatives that you can get a job with, that's awesome. But if you want to control your own career, You need to put the time in, and that's research. That's keeping a spreadsheet of every place you've applied to. Then he knows, what was the salary posted? When was it posted? When did you apply? Did it have contact information in the posting? Copy and paste or download that posting. Because when they call you, and you can't find the posting, you will say, I'm sorry, what was this job? Yeah, moving on. Thank you for your time. And I've had people answer that way. I'm like, seriously? Oh, I've applied to so many, I don't remember. What's this job name? Okay, waste my time, thank you. So, yeah,
Well,
please.
I was just gonna, share one anecdote related to the earlier point about, when you're caught off guard. I remember getting a call, which I answered, the person said, you want to offer this job, and the number she said was a couple thousand lower than the range I had put in my cover letter, because it was one of those where it's like, give us your range,
Right.
So I gave, a $10,000 range, and she gave me a number that was like 2,000 lower than my low, So I'm on the phone, I'm like, okay, great, sounds good. I hang up, and I said, no. So I immediately went and sent an email. So excited, this is a great opportunity, I'm really, happy about this. However,
Right.
back to the question of the salary, this is really not what I was looking for, and she was able to come up to get range. So even if you sort of fumble in that moment,
Right.
it's worth it to try one more time.
It's better to not fumble.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you're here, to learn that. But absolutely. You might be able to recover.
And might get a potential employer, just maybe, even though you may have given them a range, they might go a little bit.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The employers know their budget. Don't be fooled. It's not like, well, if they don't take 40, they know exactly what they have to pay you before they make that phone call. Sometimes it's more, and sometimes it's, right there, and sometimes it's less. But they know before they pick up that phone. And sometimes the person's authorized then and there because the manager says, well, make them an offer. What do you want to pay? 140. Well, what's the most? That's how I used to do it. I thought, manager said, what's the maximum? Well, don't give them that unless they really ask for it. Excuse me, who are we talking to here, people? I know that, but I don't want to have to answer you, come back to you 4 times, tell me what the range is. Like, 40 to 50. I know that when I pick up the phone. Sometimes it's 40 to 42. But I know how much I'm willing to get. And if you're on the phone already, sometimes I have the authority, I don't have to go back to the manager because I have my range, to say, all right, well, this is what we can offer. So, select your words carefully. Let the employer know you're open to negotiating. I was targeting a salary. I was looking for closer to. That would be a good way with, in that situation, you got caught off guard and thought, wait, crap, that's lower than I wanted. I was really looking for something that sounds great, thank you very much, I'm excited, but I was really looking for a salary closer to. It's not aggressive. And again, it's a starting point. Sources for salary information. Glassdoor. Again, be careful not to use only one source. Create a range based on several sources. Glassdoor.com. It's really good because the information is very honest, a little too honest at times to employers' preferences, because it's the employees who post this information.
I really don't trust them too much, like. when
The
they
salary
post-
information is decent.
I mean, with any of them, because I know that some employers, they get people to post good reviews on.
Well, the reviews, that's up to you. And there's a lot of different places. But the salary information is a really good starting point. Salary.com. I used to be a compensation analyst, which means that I set prices for salaries. If the manager wanted to hire an accountant, they would request a pricing. And I would go, at the time, that's how old I was, pre-internet, There would be books this big that consulting companies like Anderson and Mercer would send out surveys to thousands of companies around the country. And you would fill in all these little bubbles like the SAT, accountant 1, accountant 2, 35 to 45, da 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 da. And they would compile it in these massive books. And you would go and you'd pick 4 different surveys. You put them together, you'd average it, and that would be the starting point, like a midpoint. You take 20% less and 20% over, and there's your range. You can do that online in 10 minutes. It took me hours. It gave me my job, but salary.com, monster.com, career builder, LinkedIn. I should have added that one too. I'm sorry, what?
Robert Half does it too.
Robert Half does it. Yeah, all these temp companies do it. Consulting groups do it. So if you want to know something, accountant, salary, Philadelphia. Boom. 10 websites to start. And they're usually very reputable. I would add LinkedIn. I forgot to update that to LinkedIn. LinkedIn has good salary information.
And you said Robert, okay?
Robert Half. They are an accounting and business consulting placement firm.
Is it HALF?
Mm-hmm. Yep, roberthalf.com. They do a lot with accounting and finance now, but they used to be a lot more. They still do some business and HR, but their main thing is accounting and finance positions. They have a lot of information out. And that is it for me. Any questions, comments, issues?
I have a question.
Certainly.
Do you have any advice for negotiating benefits? We've sort of gotten to a number on the salary, and it's maybe not quite what you wanted.
Right.
How do you negotiate the compensation package?
It depends on the benefits. The problem with benefits now, they're usually like tied to schedule. So they're not as easy to negotiate as they used to be. Vacation might be, in your first year, this is how much you get. I would start by asking, are any of the benefits negotiable? Is there a bonus opportunity? Things like that. Because employers are not providing the level of benefits they used to. So you used to have a lot more ability to negotiate because there's a lot more on the table. It's one of the first things they start cutting in tighter economies. Something like a 401k, not negotiable because it's regulated. There's specifics around it. Vacation time, maybe. Especially if you have vacation scheduled next month after you start. Bring that up at the start of your negotiation. Let them know ahead of time anyway, but maybe it's a negotiating point. Because really the only thing with benefits would be bonus and vacation time. And some employers, even with vacation time now, is all lumped into PTO. So it's not as easy because there's not as much available. It's not impossible. You can always ask. Is there any wiggle room on the benefits? What are the options? What's available? Anything else? Certainly, please. Whatever beautiful this evening.
All right, gold star for me.
There you go.
Can you give us any advice as to how to translate this into the salary, the raise negotiation?
Sure.
Yeah.
Here is what I've been saying all night. Know your value. When you want a raise, typically, what do people do when they start talking to their boss about a raise? What's that? Okay. Well, that's the wrong thing to say.
But they don't have information, they don't have data that they can present to their boss.
I want a raise.
Yeah.
Here's why I need a raise.
Mhm.
Here's why I should be paid more. You're not telling me scrap about what you're doing for the company. Here's what I've done for the company. Here's the projects I've completed. Here's the money I've saved. You need to focus on the value of your position for the company. People always start with, well, my kid's in college and that. don't care about that. I got bills. Doesn't bother me. You want to compare spreadsheets? We'll get into it, man. I got 2 mortgages. I don't want to hear it. You need to focus on the value you bring to the organization. If you feel you deserve a raise, convince me. Why? Don't use words like deserve and entitlement. But here's what I've done for the company. Have as much hardcore numbers that you can. When I was hired as an HR director, again a few minutes ago, I started a little less than I wanted to after a very tough negotiation. The CEO was a lawyer, damn it. So we kind of, went back and forth a little. In the first year, I saved them 30 grand. I brought that up next time around. It wasn't even my review time. I waited a few months. But I could prove it and say, this is how much. I got this information from the controller. People switched to the cheapest benefit plan because I explained it to them. They got a better benefit for less money, but nobody ever told them what it was and how it worked. I saved them 30 grand. That's a month, by the way. I was able to go back with some numbers and say, hey, I know we started this same. I came on board. Now let's save some money. And I got a nice raise out of it. As I'm not accounting 30 grand by 12, I didn't do it that quick. More money than I got, but I got a nice little chunk. But it's because I had the numbers. So anytime you can bring numbers and data and information, I used to say facts, but that word's dead in our society. Information that is verifiable, you are in a better position. And again, be prepared for pushback. Well, what were you looking for? Oh, crap. All right, we're starting this. You know exactly how much you're looking for. Never, ever will, he makes 5 grand more than me. You don't know his value to the company. I don't care if it's the same job. You're going to tick off your manager and probably a lot of other people if you just start comparing salaries. Because everybody is valued different, and the value is based on what you can prove. What do you bring to the company? So that's what I recommend for internal negotiations. And if you don't have any information, what's that mean? You really don't deserve a raise.
But is that always the case, considering the difference between how women get paid and men get paid?
Well, that's a totally different thing. That's my EEOC seminar. That's negotiating tips for women. We'll work on that one next. But yeah.
Can you give us the 30-second cheat sheet version?
Well, the problem is women are usually very timid and very thankful for the offer. They feel grateful to get the offer. Grateful nothing. I worked my butt off to get here. Men don't feel like, oh, thank you, that's awesome, because they're not told to be that way. I'll keep it in mind, especially since they're recorded. But, men are told, they're supposed to ask for more. Women are told to accept what they get. So, there are specific ways to get around it without being the worst word in the world, aggressive. She wanted more money. She's aggressive. Really? By asking for more money? I actually had a manager. I had a dinosaur manager, misogynist dinosaur manager. Offer the guy 50, offer her 40. I'm sorry, let's back that up. Is there a reason? She has more experience in education. Well, no, she'll take less. How am I done? Give me an idea of what you're looking for. I'm looking for 45. She's not taking less than 45, and we're going to run into an issue if you're hiring 2 people with the same salary and one is female with less qualifications. So I had a couple rounds with that guy. which again, I wasn't afraid to, until I finally got exhausted and said, well, it's kinda illegal. What do you mean kinda? I'm sorry, that's my sarcasm when I just can't take it anymore. So, women have to speak up. And the problem is that we're trained and indoctrinated to be grateful to get an offer. So that's why if you're really timid and not averse to negotiating, you start with offer. And have a number in your head that no matter what comes along, you're not going to freeze and forget that number. Have it memorized and know what that number is. It's good for everyone, but it's really good for women.
Always need the initiation
Let
of
them
the
bring up
topic of
salary.
salary. Always be important.
Always let them bring it up. Like I said, usually my phone screen, they may say, the salary range is. You know, it's rare for them to say, well, the salary's 60. The salary range is 40 to 60. The salary range is 50 to 80, whatever it may be. Now, the other thing to remember is when they give you the salary range, unless you are absolutely convinced you're the most qualified person ever, most people only look at that top range. 40 to 60, I'll pay 60. It's good to at least be realistic and be in the middle. Unless you're convinced, hey, I've got the education, I got the experience, I'm going to go for this. You should at least be targeting the middle.
Even if for entry level, so you should research.
Have the information available. Even for entry level. Now, what I said earlier with the entry level, you may not get the $5,000 more. But if you ask for it, they might come up even $1,000 more. It was more than you would have gotten. There's nothing wrong with asking for more. The worst case scenario is to say it's firm, I can't do anything. And then you have to decide if it's worth it or not. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But if they ever say salary range is 40 to 60 and they offer you 40, unless you're like completely brand new career transition with no transferable skills, I still would ask for 45 and they might do it. Because as much aggravation you've gone through at this point, they've gone through a lot too. So that's why you have the power to negotiate. When you're in the interview process, you still don't have any power. Because you're easy to fix and move on. So when it comes to the salary, you always let them bring it up first. They may ask you, what are you looking for? What do you tell them? Well, yeah, I hope you tell them. That doesn't hurt anybody but you. What do you tell them? The range. It is a range you have memorized and emblazoned in your brain. But if someone randomly stops you on the street and asks what's your salary range, you can respond. That's not giving anything away, because that is a range you know you will accept. I've seen it when people go below the range and they're miserable. They go from one miserable job to the next because they just said, I got to get out of here, I'll take the next job. That's even less than I'm making now. How can you do that? You're already miserable. You know, unless you, let me tell you, Google calls and offers to find me out there, I'm gone, people. You have no idea the benefits Google offers. If it was a pay cut, I wouldn't have to buy food ever, so I'm good. They have 4 full-time 24-hour cafes. Free for all employees.
Yeah, it's nice up there.
Among other things. So, yeah, they call Liz. But other than that, if it's an absolute dream job, then yes, maybe salary's not important. But for the rest of us who have mortgages and pets to feed, it is. So have that range. Know what your range is. Because if you know that range, you're more likely to negotiate for it. Any other questions, comments, issues? Awesome. Well, thank you very much. If you guys have questions, certainly get in touch with me. I'm here. You can find me. see if I can do this.
Is the town PowerPoint available on?
Yeah.